My sister dropped her 2 toddlers at my apartment for urgent errands and vanished. When I discovered she had actually flown to Paris for a luxury vacation, she laughed and told me to step up. She didn't realize I was recording the call, or that I had already called her estranged husband. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The pounding in my head was synchronous with the pounding on my front door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a frantic, rhythmic hammering that suggested the building was on fire or someone was being chased. I groaned, rolling over in bed and squeezing my eyes shut against the sliver of afternoon sunlight piercing through the blinds. My body felt like it was made of lead. I had been battling a vicious bout of stomach flu for the last 48 hours, the kind that leaves you trembling, dehydrated, and unable to stand upright for more than a few minutes without feeling the room spin. I had taken a sick day from the firm, a rarity for me, and had silenced my phone, desperate for just a few hours of uninterrupted sleep. The hammering didn't stop. If anything, it got louder. "Molly, open up. It's an emergency." The voice was muffled by the wood, but unmistakable. It was Amy. I dragged myself out of bed, clutching my stomach. My legs were shaky as I navigated the hallway, grabbing my robe and wrapping it tight around my shivering frame. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open, ready to tell her to go away, that I was contagious, that I couldn't handle whatever drama she was peddling today. I never got the chance to speak. Amy breezed past me like a hurricane in designer heels, pushing a double stroller into my narrow entryway while simultaneously dragging a massive diaper bag that looked heavy enough to contain bricks. "Oh, thank God you're alive," she said, breathless, her eyes scanning the room rather than looking at me. She looked immaculate, hair blown out in perfect waves, makeup flawless, wearing a trench coat that I knew cost more than my monthly rent. In stark contrast, I was pale, sweating, and smelled like Vicks Vapo Rub. "Amy," I croaked, my voice a raspy whisper. "I'm sick, like really sick, you can't be here." I know, you texted me yesterday," she said dismissively, not slowing down. She began unpacking the kids. Bella, my 4-year-old niece, was already unbuckling herself, looking confused. Leo, 18 months old and cranky, was wailing in the back seat. "But this is a total emergency. A crisis. I have absolutely no other option." She lifted Leo out, thrusting the crying toddler into my reluctant, trembling arms. He was heavy, warm, and smelled of baby powder and distress. My stomach churned ominously. "What is going on?" I asked, trying to steady myself against the wall. "Where are you going?" "Errands," she said, the word coming out fast and sharp. "Administrative nightmare. I have to go down to the city center, deal with some bank stuff, maybe meet a lawyer about the separation. It's a mess, Molly. Colin is being impossible, the accounts are frozen, and I just need 3 hours. 4, tops." "Amy, look at me," I pleaded, shifting Leo's weight as he grabbed a fistful of my hair. "I might vomit at any second. I am not in a state to watch 2 children. Can't you call the nanny or mom?" "Nanny quit," she snapped, checking her watch, a gold Cartier tank watch I hadn't seen before. "And mom is in Florida. You are literally the only person I trust with them. Please, Molly, be a sister. I'm drowning here." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a second, I saw the familiar manipulation behind her eyes. She knew exactly which buttons to push. She knew I was the responsible one, the fixer, the paralegal who organized everyone's life because I couldn't bear to see things fall apart. 3 hours, I whispered, defeated. "If you're not back by 5, I'm calling the police." "You're dramatic," she laughed, pecking me on the cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume, sandalwood and rose, not the stress sweat she claimed to be in. "I'll be back before you know it. Feed Leo at 3. Bella has her iPad. Love you." And just like that, she was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving me standing in the hallway with a screaming toddler, a confused 4-year-old, and a fever that was rapidly spiking. The next few hours were a blur of misery. I managed to get Leo settled with a bottle, propping myself up on the sofa with a bucket nearby just in case. Bella was surprisingly well-behaved, sitting on the rug with her coloring book, occasionally glancing up at me with wide, worried eyes. "Auntie Molly, are you dying?" she asked innocently around 4:00 p.m. "No, sweetie," I managed to say, wiping cold sweat from my forehead. "Just very sick. Mommy will be back soon." Bella frowned, stopping her coloring. She looked at the clock on the wall, then back at me. "Mommy isn't coming back soon." I blinked, trying to focus. "What do you mean?" She said she had errands. Bella shook her head, her little pigtails bouncing. She looked incredibly sure of herself in the way only 4-year-olds can be. "No, Mommy said errands are for boring people." She packed the big pink suitcase, the one with wheels. A cold chill that had nothing to do with my fever went down my spine. "Bella, did Mommy take the suitcase with her today?" "She put it in the Uber," Bella said matter-of-factly. "She told me not to tell, but she said she needs a break. She said she's going to see the big tower." My heart stopped. The big tower. "The one in the movie," Bella clarified, returning to her crayon. "The one in Paris. Mommy is on a vacation." I stared at the child, my brain struggling to process the information. Paris? It wasn't possible. She had dropped them off 3 hours ago. She said she was going to the bank. She said she was meeting a lawyer. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table. My fingers were shaking so badly I mistyped my passcode twice. I opened Instagram. Nothing new. I opened Facebook. Nothing. But then I remembered. Amy had a private Snapchat she used for her close friends circle, a circle she often forgot I was a part of because I rarely used the app. I opened it. There was a story posted 40 minutes ago. It was a video. The camera panned around the interior of a first-class cabin, champagne flute in hand, legs stretched out in a plush leather seat. The caption read, "Au revoir, boring life. Paris awaits. Airplane, clinking glasses, self-care mommy break." The timestamp showed she was already in the air. The betrayal hit me harder than the virus ever could. It wasn't just that she left me with the kids while I was sick. It was the premeditation, the suitcase in the Uber, the lie to my face. She looked at her sick sister, handed over her children, and fled the country. I sat there, the phone slipping from my hand onto the couch cushions, staring at Bella. My sister hadn't gone to run errands. She had abandoned her children with a woman who could barely stand up to go drink champagne in France. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself, I whispered to the empty room. For a solid 10 minutes, I just sat there, paralyzed. The physical nausea was now competing with a rising tide of panic and rage. My sister was on a transatlantic flight. She was at least 30,000 feet in the air, unreachable, untouchable. Leo started to fuss in his playpen, the sound piercing through the fog in my brain. I took a deep breath, forcing the air into my lungs. Prioritize, Molly. You do this for a living. Analyze the facts, determine the immediate needs, execute a plan. First, the kids. They were safe for now. I wasn't infectious with anything respiratory, just a brutal stomach bug, so as long as I washed my hands and didn't prepare food directly, they would be okay. But I couldn't care for them for a week. I couldn't care for them for 24 hours. I needed to confirm this wasn't some sick joke. Maybe the Snapchat was old, a throwback. I dialed Amy's number. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Amy, leave a message, but I probably won't listen to it." I tried FaceTime, failed instantly. Then I remembered the Find My app. We shared locations for safety, a pact we made years ago when she was going through her party phase and I was the designated driver of her life. I opened the map. Her icon wasn't at the downtown bank. It wasn't at a lawyer's office. It was moving rapidly over the Atlantic Ocean. The reality settled in like a heavy stone in my gut. She had actually done it. I went into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and forced myself to drink it. Then I went back to the living room and looked at Bella. "Bella, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Did Mommy say when she was coming back? Bella shrugged without looking up. She said when she feels better. She said she's tired of crying. I gritted my teeth. Amy wasn't tired of crying. Amy was tired of responsibility. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Amy. It must have been sent using the in-flight Wi-Fi. Amy landed safely in spirit. Don't be mad, I needed this. You're the best aunt ever. See you in a week. Zoxa. A week? She was gone for a week. I didn't text back immediately. I needed to hear her voice. I needed her to hear mine. I waited. I watched the flight tracker app I had quickly downloaded, plugging in the flight number visible on her champagne ticket in the Snapchat video. 6 hours later. It was now 10:00 p.m. The kids were finally asleep, Leo in my bed surrounded by pillows, Bella on the couch. I was exhausted, my fever having spiked and broken again, leaving me drenched in sweat. The tracker showed, landed. I waited 20 minutes for her to get Thraug. H Customs or turn her phone on, then I called. It rang, 1 ring, 2 rings. Hello. Her voice was cheerful, surrounded by the ambient noise of a busy airport terminal. There was laughter in the background, a man's laughter. Amy, I said. My voice was low, deadly calm. It was the voice I used when opposing counsel tried to hide assets in a divorce discovery. Molly, I told you not to call, roaming is expensive, she giggled. Did you get my text? I seriously had to get out. The stress was killing me. You understand, right? You left your children, I said, enunciating every syllable. You left your children with your sick sister, lied about running errands, and flew to another continent. Oh, stop being so dramatic, she scoffed. You're not that sick. You sounded fine this morning. Besides, Bella loves you. It's a little vacation for them too, a sleepover. I am throwing up every hour, Amy. I can barely walk. Well, order a pizza. Put on a movie. It's not rocket science, Molly. Millions of women raise kids every day. You can handle 2 of them for a few days. A few days? You said a week. Maybe a week, maybe 10 days. I don't know yet, I have an open ticket. The casualness of it snapped something inside me. Who are you with? Friends, she said quickly, too quickly. Just a girl's trip. I heard a man laughing, Amy. That's just someone near me. Look, I have to go, my Uber is here. Thanks for stepping up, just be a good aunt, okay? Do it for the family. Amy, listen to me very carefully, I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. You need to get on the next flight back, tonight. Or what? She challenged, her tone shifting from bubbly to icy. You'll call Mom, she's on a cruise, you'll call the cops. Don't be ridiculous, you'd never embarrass the family like that. You're the good one, remember? You fix things, so fix this. I am not fixing this, Amy. I am telling you to return to your children. No, she said flatly. I deserve this. I've been a slave to those kids for 4 years. I'm taking my life back. If you can't handle it, that's your problem. Figure it out. Click. She hung up on me. I stared at the phone, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. She thought she had me cornered. She thought I was the same pushover sister who did her homework in high school, who lied to our parents about her curfew, who bailated her out of credit card debt 3 times. She thought I was just Molly the paralegal, the boring, safe safety net. But she had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just a paralegal. I was a senior paralegal specializing in high-conflict family law. I spent 60 hours a week watching arrogant, selfish people lose everything because they thought the rules didn't apply to them. I knew exactly what abandonment looked like in the eyes of a family court judge. I knew exactly how to document evidence. And I knew exactly who held the leverage when one parent flees the jurisdiction without the other parent's consent. She told me to figure it out, so I was going to. I looked at my phone again. I opened my contacts and scrolled past Mom. I scrolled past Dad. I stopped at a name I hadn't called in 6 months, not since Amy told me he was dangerous and abusive and forced me to block him on social media. Colin. Amy thought she was on a vacation. She didn't realize she had just initiated a custody battle she was destined to lose. To understand why Amy felt comfortable dumping her children on me and fleeing the country, you have to understand the dynamic we've had since birth. Amy was the sun, and the rest of us were just planets orbiting her, hoping for a little warmth but mostly getting burned. She was the beauty queen, the cheerleader, the one who could charm a state trooper out of a speeding ticket with a bat of her eyelashes. I was the smart one, the reliable one. When Amy wrecked her car at 16, I was the one who drove her to school for 3 months. When she flunked out of her first semester of college, I helped her write her appeal letter. When she got pregnant with Bella and wasn't sure she was ready, I was the one who held her hand, bought the prenatal vitamins, and set up the nursery. I loved her, I truly did, but I had enabled her. For years, Amy had painted a picture of her marriage to Colin as a prison. She told me he was controlling, that he restricted her spending, that he didn't want her to have a social life. When they separated 6 months ago, she painted herself as the victim of a narcissist. She claimed he didn't want to see the kids, that he was too busy with his construction business to care. "He's a monster, Molly," she had told me, tears streaming down her perfect face. "I have to protect Bella and Leo from him." So I believed her. I helped her move into her new condo. I babysat whenever she needed mental health days. I ignored the red flags, like the fact that Colin sent checks every week or the boxes of gifts for the kids that arrived on the porch, which Amy promptly threw in the trash or returned for store credit. But tonight, looking at Bella sleeping on my couch, the illusion cracked. A mother who lives for her children doesn't fly to Paris on a whim. A mother terrified of her ex-husband doesn't leave the country and leave her kids unprotected. I needed to know who she was really with. Amy wasn't smart enough to pull this off alone. She was impulsive, yes, but she wasn't a planner. Paris required logistics. I went back to my laptop. I wasn't just going to sit here. I logged into a secondary Instagram account I used for work. We called it a burner account at the firm, used for checking up on opposing parties who blocked our clients. I searched for Amy's profile. It was private, but I searched for her tags. It didn't take long. Amy had a friend, a woman named Jessica she had met at a Pilates retreat 3 months ago. Jessica was an influencer coach. Her profile was a shrine to narcissism. Photos of her on yachts, in Dubai, in Chalum, always with captions about manifesting abundance and cutting toxic ties. And there, in Jessica's latest reel posted 2 hours ago, was Amy. They were in the back of a luxury van, but they weren't alone. Sitting next to Amy, with his hand resting possessively on her knee, was a man. He was older, maybe 50, with silver hair and a suit that looked Italian. I paused the video and zoomed in. He looked familiar, not in a family friend way, but in a "I've seen this face in a deposition" way. I took a screenshot and ran a reverse image search. Jean-Luc Dubois, a venture capitalist based in Lyon, or so he claimed. A quick search of his name in our legal database, one of the perks of my job, brought up 3 lawsuits in New York for fraud and breach of contract. He was a grifter, a high-end con artist who targeted wealthy divorcees or women looking for a lifestyle upgrade. This was who was influencing her. Jessica, the coach, was likely the recruiter, and Jean-Luc was the prize. They were selling Amy a fantasy, a life of travel, luxury, and freedom from the drudgery of motherhood. They were feeding her the line that she deserved more, that her children were anchors dragging her down, that she needed to shed her old life to ascend to this new level of abundance. Amy wasn't just on vacation. She was being groomed. She was being pulled into a world where moral responsibility was a weakness. She looked different in the video. Her smile was tight, unnatural. She was trying so hard to fit in, laughing too loudly at something Jean-Luc whispered. She looked desperate. The video cut to Jessica speaking to the camera. "We are live from Paris, baby, teaching these queens how to level up. If your reality doesn't serve you, change it. If your obligations are heavy, drop them. You are the main character." Drop them, I repeated, looking at the sleeping forms of my niece and nephew. She hadn't just left them. She had discarded them like out-of-season accessories because a con artist and a fake guru told her they didn't match her new aesthetic. My sadness evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Amy wanted to be the main character? Fine, every main character needs a villain. She had cast me as the doormat, the sidekick who cleans up the mess. But she forgot that in my world, the world of contracts, custody orders, and family court, the person with the documentation is the one who writes the ending. I wasn't going to be the good aunt. I was going to be the best paralegal she had ever met. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I had sworn never to call. It rang 3 times. "Hello," a deep, tired voice answered. It sounded wary. "Molly." "Colin," I said, my voice trembling slightly but gathering strength. "I know it's late, and I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need you to listen to me, and I need you not to hang up." "What is it?" he asked, the wariness turning to alarm. "Is it the kids? Are they okay?" "They are safe, they are with me," I said, "but Amy isn't." "What do you mean? Where is she?" "She's in Paris, Colin. She left them with me and flew to Paris with a man named Jean-Luc Dubois, and I don't think she's coming back anytime soon." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then, a sound I didn't expect. A sharp intake of breath, followed by a voice cracking with emotion. She told me if I tried to see them, she'd file a restraining order," Colin whispered. "I haven't seen Bella in 4 months. I don't even know what Leo looks like now." My heart broke. All the lies Amy had told me crumbled instantly. "Colin," I said firmly, "do you have a lawyer?" "I fired him. He said it was hopeless because Amy had full custody." "Get a pen," I said. "I'm going to give you the name of the fiercest shark in my firm, and then you're going to come over here, because we have a lot of work to do before the sun comes up." The knock at the door this time was hesitant, almost apologetic. I dragged myself off the couch, my joints aching with a fresh wave of fever, and checked the peephole. It was Colin. He looked nothing like the monster Amy had described for the last 2 years. He looked like a man who had been eroded by wind and rain. His shoulders were slumped, his work boots were covered in drywall dust, and his eyes were red-rimmed, set deep in a face pale with anxiety. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. "Molly," he breathed, his voice cracking. He didn't step inside immediately. He stood on the mat as if waiting for permission, as if he'd been conditioned to believe he wasn't welcome in my space. "Come in, Colin," I said softly, stepping aside. He walked in, bringing the scent of rain and sawdust with him. His eyes immediately darted around the apartment, frantic and searching. "Where are they?" he whispered. "SHH," I motioned to the living room. "Bella is on the couch. Leo is in the pack-and-play in the bedroom. They're out cold." He walked over to the couch on tiptoes, his movements so careful for such a large man. He knelt beside Bella, who was sprawled out with her mouth slightly open, clutching a stuffed rabbit I recognized, one he had bought her for her 3rd birthday, which Amy had claimed was lost. He hovered his hand over her hair, trembling, afraid to touch her lest she disappear like a mirage. A single tear tracked through the dust on his cheek. "I haven't seen her without a screen between us since Christmas," he choked out. "Amy said. She said Bella was scared of me. She said Bella cried every time my name was mentioned." "She lied," I said, the anger burning hot in my chest, cutting through the nausea. "Bella asked about you today. She found a picture of you on my fridge and kissed it." Colin let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh, burying his face in his hands. It was a raw, guttural sound of relief and grief. Seeing him like this, broken, loving, and utterly desperate, solidified everything. I had been an accessory to his alienation. I had believed the pretty sister with the perfect tears over the quiet man who just wanted to be a dad. "I'm so sorry, Colin," I said, my voice steadying into professional resolve. "I am so sorry I didn't see it sooner, but we don't have time for guilt tonight. We have work to do." He wiped his face with his sleeve and looked up at me, his expression hardening. What do we do? If she finds out I'm here, she'll call the police. She has full temporary custody. She had full temporary custody, I corrected, walking over to my kitchen table where my laptop was already glowing. Custody orders are based on the premise that the custodial parent is actually present and providing care. Abandonment is a game changer, Colin, and fleeing the jurisdiction with a known con artist, that's not just a game changer, that's a nuclear option. I pulled out a chair for him. Sit. I need to ask you some hard questions, and I need you to be brutally honest. Then, we are going to draft an affidavit that will make a family court judge's head spin. For the next 4 hours, we didn't sleep. I brewed a pot of coffee for him and sipped Gatorade for myself, fighting the waves of dizziness as I typed. We started with the clever trap, the diaper bag. Bring it here, I instructed. Colin hoisted the heavy bag onto the table. We inventoried it like a crime scene. 3 diapers, I noted, typing it into the evidence log. For 2 children for a designated 3-day period, no formula, no change of clothes for Leo, 2 pouches of fruit puree. She didn't pack for them, Colin said, his voice low and angry. She packed for appearances. It looks like a mom bag, but there's nothing in it. Exactly, I said. It proves she had no intention of you or me caring for them properly. She dumped them. It shows a reckless disregard for their basic welfare. Then we moved to the financials. I had Colin log into their joint bank account, the one he was still depositing into, but wasn't allowed to access according to Amy's rules. Oh my God, he whispered, staring at the screen. What? The savings, he said, pointing a shaking finger at the balance. It was $40,000. We were saving for a down payment on a house for the kids before everything happened. It's gone. I leaned in. The balance was $412. There was a withdrawal from 2 days ago, a wire transfer. Recipient, Global Ventures LLC Lyon. Jean-Luc, I said, the name tasting like poison. She didn't just buy a ticket, Colin, she gave him your life savings. Why? Colin asked, looking pale. Why would she do that? Because that's how the scam works, I explained, my fingers flying across the keyboard, capturing screenshots of the transaction history. They convince you that you're investing in your new future, that you have to buy NTO the abundance to receive it. She thinks she's investing in a business deal that will make her rich and independent. She's actually funding his next con. By 4:00 a.m., we had a 30-page affidavit. We had the flight records. We had the social media screenshots of her drinking champagne while her children were essentially abandoned. We had the text messages where she refused to return. And we had the financial records showing the theft of marital assets. I'm sending this to Richard Henderson, I said, hitting attach on the email. Richard was the senior partner at my firm. He was a terrifying man in court, a shark who smelled blood in the water from miles away. He owes me a favor for working through Christmas last year. He'll meet us at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. for an emergency ex parte hearing. Colin looked at me, exhausted but looking lighter than he had in years. You're really doing this? You're going against your own sister. I looked over at the sleeping children. I'm not going against my sister, Colin. I'm protecting my family, and right now, that's them. And you. The morning was a blur of adrenaline and nausea. I managed to shower and put on my court armor, a sharp navy blazer and tailored trousers, though I looked pale enough to be a ghost. We left the kids with my neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, a retired nurse who I trusted implicitly and who had been fed a sanitized version of events. Amy had a medical emergency. The courthouse was cold and echoed with the sounds of unhappy people, but Richard Henderson was a force of nature. He took one look at our binder of evidence, raised an eyebrow, and said, "This is surgical, Molly. Let's go get these kids back." The hearing took 20 minutes. The judge, a stern woman who had zero tolerance for parental negligence, looked at the photo of Amy in first class, then at the timestamp of her text telling me to figure it out, and finally at the bank transfer. Temporary sole physical and legal custody granted to the father, she ruled, stamping the order with a satisfying thud. I'm also issuing a writ of ne-exit. If she returns to the country, she surrenders her passport immediately until this matter is resolved, and freezing the remaining assets. We walked out of the courtroom with the paper that changed everything. Colin held the court order like it was made of glass. "It's over," he whispered. "No," I said, checking my watch. It was 11:00 a.m. That meant it was 5:00 p.m. in Paris. "It's just beginning, now," we tell her. We went back to my apartment. I made tea. Colin sat on the couch, Bella in his lap. She hadn't let go of him since she woke up and found him there. The look of pure, unadulterated joy on her face when she saw her daddy in my kitchen had made me cry for 10 minutes straight. My phone rang. FaceTime, Amy. "Ready?" I asked Colin. He nodded, his jaw set. I answered. Amy's face filled the screen. She was outdoors, sitting at a cafe table with the Eiffel Tower distinctly visible in the background. She was wearing a beret, a literal beret, and oversized sunglasses. She looked like a caricature of a tourist. "Molly," she chirped, though her voice had a strained edge. "Why haven't you been answering my texts? I asked for a picture of Leo hours ago. Jessica wants to see my little angels for her vision board." "I've been busy, Amy," I said, keeping the phone angled so only I was visible. "How is Paris?" "Oh, it's magical," she sighed, taking a sip of wine. "The energy here, it's just so high vibration. Jean-Luc introduced me to some investors today. Big things are happening, Molly. You're going to eat your words about me being irresponsible." "Is that so?" I asked calmly. "And did you use the $40,000 from the joint savings account to buy into this vibration?" Amy froze, the wine glass paused halfway to her mouth. She lowered her sunglasses, her eyes narrowing. "How do you know about that?" "I know a lot of things, Amy. I know you wired the money to Global Ventures LLC. I know you're with Jean-Luc Dubois. And I know that Jean-Luc is currently under investigation for 3 counts of wire fraud in the Southern District of New York." "You're lying," she spat, the bubbly persona vanishing instantly. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me. You're stuck in your sad little apartment with your sad little job, and I'm here building an empire. Jean-Luc is a visionary." "Jean-Luc is a con man, Amy," I said, my voice raising slightly. "And you are his mark, but that's not even the worst part." "Shut up, I'm hanging up. Don't expect me to pay you for babysitting." "You don't have to pay me," I said, "but you might want to talk to the person who is actually watching your children right now." I turned the phone. I panned the camera to the couch. To Colin, to Bella, who was snuggled into his chest, laughing as he tickled her arm. The silence on the line was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum. What?" Amy's voice was a strangled whisper. "What is he doing there? Molly, get him out, he's dangerous, he's not allowed near them." "Hi, Amy," Colin said. His voice wasn't angry, it was just, "Done, I'm not going anywhere." "Molly," she screamed, the sound distorting on the speaker. People at the cafe behind her turned to look. "I am calling the police. I have a custody order. You are kidnapping my children. This is illegal." "Actually," I said, turning the camera back to myself and holding up the document we had just secured. "It's perfectly legal. This is an emergency ex parte order signed by Judge Harrison 2 hours ago. Colin has full sole custody, effective immediately. The judge found that fleeing the country and leaving your toddlers with a sick relative constituted immediate and irreparable harm. You lost them, Amy." "No," she breathed, her face draining of color. "You can't do that, you're my sister." "I'm their aunt," I said sharply. "And I'm a mandatory reporter, you abandoned them." "Put Colin on," she demanded, panic finally setting in. "Colin, you can't do this. I'll come home right now, just undo it." "You can't undo it, Amy," Colin said from the background. "And don't bother rushing to the airport." Why? She shrieked. Because, I cut in, delivering the final blow for this round. The judge also froze the joint accounts to prevent further dissipation of assets. You spent the last of your cash on that wine. Your cards aren't going to work. I watched the realization hit her. She looked down at the bill on the table, then back at the phone, terror in her eyes. Molly, please. I hope the abundance pays for your ticket home, Amy, I said, because we aren't. I ended the call. The silence after the call was heavy, but it wasn't peaceful. We had poked the bear, and even a bear trapped in a luxury Parisian trap would fight back. She's going to spiral, Colin said, stroking Bella's hair. When Amy gets cornered, she gets vicious. Let her, I said, though my hands were shaking again. The adrenaline was wearing off and the sickness was creeping back in. Everything she does now is evidence. Every crazy text, every threat, every social media rant, we capture it all. And spiral she did. Over the next 24 hours, Amy's social media transformed from a curated travelogue into a frantic smear campaign. She posted stories of herself crying in her hotel room, which looked significantly smaller than the one she had started in, claiming that her abusive ex and jealous sister had stolen her babies while she was on a business trip. She tagged men's rights groups, she tagged toxic family pages, she tried to weaponize the internet against us. But while she was fighting a PR war, I was fighting the actual war. I took the rest of the week off work. My boss, having seen the affidavit, told me to take as much time as I needed. Bury him, he had said, referring to Jean-Luc. I dug deeper into Jean-Luc Dubois. The name was an alias, obviously. His real name was Lucien Morty, a mid-level grifter from New Jersey who had fled to Europe 3 years ago to avoid a grand larceny indictment. I found a forum, a deep web message board dedicated to victims of romance scams. I searched his alias. I found a thread, scammed by Global Ventures / Jean-Luc, read here. I connected with a woman named Sophie in London. We spoke on the phone while Colin took the kids to the park. The first time he had been allowed to take them to a playground in a year. He destroyed me, Sophie told me, her voice flat and devoid of hope. He promised me we were opening a gallery. I liquidated my pension. He took £200,000 and left me in a hotel room in Rome with a maxed-out credit card and a fake diamond necklace. I need proof, Sophie, I said. I need something that links him to the pattern. My sister is with him now. She's not a victim yet in her own mind, but she's about to be. I have emails, Sophie said. I have the fake business plans, and I have a recording. He likes to record his wins. He sent me a voice note mocking me after he left. It's vile. Send it, I said. When the file arrived, I played it. It was Jean-Luc's voice, smooth and arrogant. Sophie, darling, don't be tragic. You paid for an experience. You felt young again for a month. That's a service. Consider the money a tuition fee for the school of life. It was chilling, but it was exactly what I needed. Meanwhile, Amy's situation in Paris was deteriorating. The freeze on the accounts had worked. She sent me a barrage of texts ranging from begging to threatening death. Amy, my card got declined at the hotel. They are threatening to call the police. Fix this now. Amy, I have no food. I am your sister. How can you be so cruel? Amy, Jean-Luc is going to sue you for defamation. He has powerful lawyers. He doesn't have lawyers. I told Colin that even in. Showing him the texts. He has an exit strategy. What do you mean? Grifters don't stay when the money dries up, I said. Amy is no longer a source of funds. She's a liability. He's going to dump her. The second confrontation didn't happen on a scheduled call. It happened when Amy called me at 3:00 a.m. my time, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. He's gone, she wailed. He's gone, Molly. Who is gone? I asked, sitting up in the dark, fumbling for my glasses. Jean-Luc, I came back from the embassy, trying to get my passport sorted, and the hotel room was empty. His bags are gone. My laptop is gone. He took my jewelry. I told you, Amy, I said, feeling no satisfaction, only a weary sadness. I told you who he was. He left a note, she sobbed, her voice breaking into hiccups. It says tuition fee. What does that mean? I closed my eyes. The recording, he had used the same line. It means you've been played, I said. It means you are alone in Paris with no money, no passport, and pending criminal charges for child abandonment back home. Help me, she whispered. It was the first time in her life she had asked for help without an ounce of entitlement. It was the voice of a child who had broken a vase and didn't know how to fix it. Please, Molly, I'm scared. I want to come home. I want my kids. You can come home, I said, my voice hard. I will arrange a ticket using my miles, but you need to understand something, Amy. Anything, she cried. You aren't coming home to your kids. You're coming home to a court hearing. Colin has custody. You are going to have to answer for everything you did. Everything. But I'm the mom, she faltered, the old entitlement flickering faintly. Not anymore, I said. Right now, you're just a defendant. I'll email you the flight details. Don't miss it. I hung up and walked into the living room. Colin was asleep on the floor next to the playpen, his hand reaching through the mesh to hold Leo's tiny foot. The spell was broken. The antagonist was destroyed, but the debris field she had left behind was massive, and we were the ones who would have to clean it up. The family meeting was summoned 3 days after Amy landed. She hadn't been arrested at the airport. I hadn't pressed criminal charges yet, opting to hold that card in reserve. But she had been served with the custody papers the moment she stepped through customs. She had retreated immediately to our parents' house. Mom and Dad had cut their Florida trip short, flying back in a panic after receiving hysterical calls from Amy claiming I had kidnapped her children and that Colin had brainwashed me. The stage was set in our childhood living room. It was a room that usually smelled of cinnamon and safety, but today the air was thick with a suffocating tension. My mother sat in her armchair, looking pale and torn. My father stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Amy sat on the sofa. She looked tragic. She had clearly spent hours curating her appearance to evoke maximum sympathy. She wore no makeup, her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing an oversized sweater that made her look small and frail. She was weeping softly into a tissue when Colin and I walked in. You're here, Amy sniffed, looking up with wide, tear-filled eyes. Mom, tell them to give me my babies back. I made a mistake, okay? I went on a trip. People go on trips. That doesn't mean you steal their children. Mom looked at me, her eyes pleading. Molly, honey, surely this has gone too far. Amy made a terrible judgment call, we know that. But Colin taking full custody, freezing her accounts, she's their mother, she's destitute. She's not destitute, Mom, I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with Amy's theatrics. I walked over to the coffee table and placed a heavy black binder down with a deliberate thud. She's a victim of her own greed, and we aren't here to negotiate custody. That's already done. We're here so you understand why we aren't going back. He's lying to you, Amy screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Colin, who stood silently by the door, a sentinel of resolve. He manipulated Molly. He's trying to punish me for leaving him. Amy, stop, I said. I opened the binder. Mom, Dad, you need to see this. I laid out the photos first. The screenshots of the first-class champagne toast. The time-stamped texts where she told me to figure it out while I was sick. The video of her partying in Paris while Bella was asking why Mommy left. Mom picked up the photo of the champagne toast, her hand trembling. You said you went for a mental health retreat, Amy. You said you were in a clinic. I was, Amy lied, her eyes darting around the room. That was juice. It was a therapy exercise. It was Dom Perignon, I corrected dryly. And this, I pulled out the bank records. This is the $40,000 from her and Colin's joint savings. The money meant for Bella's school tuition and a house down payment. I pushed the paper across the mahogany table. Wire transfer to Global Ventures LLC. Date, the day she left. My father stepped forward, picking up the document. He adjusted his reading glasses, his brow furrowing. Amy, did you take the savings, all of it? I invested it, Amy cried, standing up now, her voice rising to a shriek. I was doing it for us. Jean-Luc said it would triple in a month. I was going to buy us a mansion, Dad. I was trying to provide. You gave it to a con man because you wanted to be rich without working, I said, cutting through her delusion. And when he left you, what did he say? What was the note, Amy? Amy went white. She sank back onto the sofa. I have something else, I said. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the Bluetooth speaker on the side table. I spoke to another woman Jean-Luc scammed. He likes to record his victories. I pressed play. The voice of Jean-Luc filled the room, smooth, arrogant, and mocking. It wasn't the recording from Sophie this time. It was a voicemail he had left Amy that I had retrieved from her cloud backup during discovery. Amy, Sherry, do not look for me. Consider the money a small price for the lesson. You were never a partner. You were. How do you say? Heavy baggage. Go back to your little life. You are too desperate for my world. The silence that followed was absolute. The humiliation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Amy wasn't just a victim. She was a fool who had gambled her family's security on a compliment from a predator. You, Mom whispered, staring at Amy as if seeing her for the first time. You emptied the savings account for him. I thought he loved me, Amy wailed, burying her face in her hands. I just wanted to be special. I hate my life. I hate being a mom. It's so hard and nobody helps me. Nobody helps you? Colin spoke for the first time. His voice was low, shaking with suppressed rage. He stepped into the center of the room. I sent you checks every week. Molly practically raised Bella for you. Your parents paid your rent twice last year. You don't hate being a mom, Amy. You hate not being the center of the universe. Amy looked up, her face twisted in a snarl. The mask of the victim fell away completely, revealing the narcissist beneath. Shut up! You're a loser, Colin. You're a boring, dusty contractor. I deserve better than you. I deserve better than wiping noses and changing diapers. She lunged. It happened so fast. She scrambled off the couch and grabbed the car keys from the table. I'm taking them. They're my kids. You can't stop me. She tried to push past me to get to the door, presumably to drive to my apartment where the kids were with the sitter. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, blocking her path. Sit down, Amy, I said, my voice steel. Move, Molly, she screamed, raising her hand to slap me. I caught her wrist in midair. I gripped it tight, not enough to hurt, but enough to show her that I wasn't the little sister she could bully anymore. I said, sit down, I repeated, my eyes locking onto hers. You aren't going anywhere. You have no car seat. You have no money. You have no home. And most importantly, you have no legal standing. I released her wrist, and she stumbled back, shock written all over her face. She looked at Mom and Dad for support, for the usual bailout. My father turned his back on her. He walked over to Colin and placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, son, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. We didn't know, we didn't know. Mom remained seated, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't reach out to Amy. She just looked at the floor. You need help, Amy, serious help, but you aren't taking those children. Amy stood there, panting, looking from one family member to the next. The realization finally hit her. The manipulation hadn't worked. The tears hadn't worked. The tantrums hadn't worked. She was completely, utterly alone. She collapsed onto the floor, not in a theatrical swoon, but in a heap of genuine defeat. She sobbed ugly, raw sobs of a woman who had burned her own life to the ground and was finally feeling the heat of the ash. It's over, Amy, I said softly. The only way forward now is through the court, and this time you're going to play by the rules. The final custody hearing took place 3 months later. The autumn leaves were turning brown outside the courthouse windows, matching the somber finality of the proceedings. Amy had tried to fight initially. She had found a cheap lawyer who tried to argue that her trip was a temporary lapse in judgment caused by postpartum depression. But the evidence we had compiled, the financial theft, the tuition fee recording, the testimony from my parents about the confrontation, was insurmountable. I sat in the gallery behind Colin. He wore a new suit we had picked out together. He looked healthier, stronger. The haunted look in his eyes was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. The judge, the same stern woman who had granted the emergency order, didn't mince words. "Ms. Miller," the judge addressed Amy, who sat slumped at the defense table. "In 20 years on the bench, I have rarely seen a case of such profound selfishness. You didn't just leave your children, you liquidated their future to fund a fantasy. You prioritized your ego over their survival." Amy didn't look up, she just nodded, defeated. "Final judgment," the gavel came down. "Sole legal and physical custody awarded to the father, Colin Miller. The mother is granted supervised visitation, 2 hours every Saturday, to occur at a court-approved center. Child support is set at state guidelines to be garnished directly from your wages." The judge paused, looking over her glasses. "And regarding the $40,000, judgment is entered in favor of Mr. Miller. You will repay every cent, Ms. Miller, even if it takes you the rest of your life." Walking out of the courthouse, the air felt crisp and clean. It felt like the end of a long, feverish illness. Colin stopped on the steps and turned to me. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know how to say it other than that. You saved us. You gave me my life back." "You saved yourself, Colin," I smiled, adjusting my bag. "I just handled the paperwork." We went to the park afterwards to pick up the kids from my parents who were watching them. Bella was on the swings, her laughter ringing out clear and bright. Leo was toddling through the leaves, chasing a squirrel. When Bella saw Colin, she didn't just run, she flew. "Daddy!" He caught her, swinging her up into the air, burying his face in her neck. The sound of their reunion was the best closing argument I could have ever asked for.